All right, we are back. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be today. We are happy for you to be joining us. Welcome to this week's episode of Get Unstuck. It is a weekly show where Marcella and I and our band of merry friends, constantly evolving, join together to try and help one entrepreneur get unstuck from some problem that they may be having. Just in case you don't know, or if this is your first time, this show is every Friday. We are always looking for additional guests. If you'd like to be on the show because you've got a problem that you would like to see solved, we're happy to help you. You can find all of the episodes over at foundercraft.com. If you'd like to appear on the show with us, you can do so by heading over to this URL. And we're looking forward to it. Today, we have a really interesting and fun version of our show. We will be helping an entrepreneur through his pitch process. Marcella, anything you want to add? I know you were a scout for this one.
No, I'm excited for this in particular. We are really looking at different communities that we can help, entrepreneurial communities that we can help through our efforts. And this is one in particular that means a lot to me. You'll see why momentarily. So as an inner city kid growing up in Washington Heights, I think this is super exciting. So I was happy to help on this one.
Oh, this is great. Well, before we dive into our entrepreneur for the week, I'm going to bring in our guests little by little. So I'm going to start with William. William, can you give us a quick hello and an intro?
Sure. And thanks so much for allowing me to be here. My name is William Crowder. I am entrepreneur in residence at Morgan Stanley, where I work with their Multicultural Innovation Lab. I'm also a VC. Formerly ran one of the funds that Comcast launched several years ago that was focused on diverse founders, investing in African American and Latino founders from around the country. Also a former partner at Dream It, which is a startup accelerator where I work with over 100 companies, helping them in many ways get unstuck. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. We're very happy to have you here today. Now let's add our other friend, Dan. Welcome to the show for the first time. I know we will have you here many times. So why don't you give us a quick intro?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here. So my name's Dan Quijana, and I'm 25 years in the startup ecosystem through Silicon Valley and Seattle and Boston. I'm working on my fourth startup right now, which is a fintech company, a mobile banking app that's targeted at millennials. And I love to be an advisor, mentor, help dozens of startups along the way. And I also happen to be the founder and host of Founders Unfound, which is a podcast that spotlights exceptional founders from underrepresented backgrounds. So this is all right up my alley.
Oh, that is wonderful. And I'm really happy that everyone here is doing so much to help all the various constituencies in the startup ecosystem.
So Greg, I do want to point out that it's an important point to make that connections matter, even when things don't go your way as an entrepreneur. I pitched William from one of my startups. We got pretty far in the pitch and came back a couple of times, but they did not invest. But William and I connected anyway, and we've been good friends, and he has been an advisor many times over again. So I think that's an important tip just right off the bat for entrepreneurs, that sometimes a no can build on a relationship over many years. So I think it's been over 5 years that we've been connected through.
Yeah, maybe even longer. Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought that was a fun point.
Super good point. Like, I think if you're only opportunistic, you're missing the point, right? Like most of the friends I have been random encounters over, a dozen or more years. So thank you for pointing that out. So now last, but certainly not least, is our entrepreneur in the hot seat today. So Armando, you are a very brave soul to come on here and share your most deepest, darkest fears and secrets with us. We wanted to give you a chance to say hello, introduce your business, introduce yourself, and then do your elevator pitch. And then we're going to dive right into helping you with your presentation and your investor deck.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for your time and your willingness to support, our efforts as we navigate the whole tech startups landscape and ultimately manifest, our dream into the world. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much. Great. So to begin, my name is Armando Somoza. I am CEO and co-founder of Code Society. So there's no secret, there's a lack of diversity in the tech industry. And we've seen an explosion in coding initiatives for young people, right, in the education space. So coding, coding, coding. Everybody's saying it's the 21st century literacy and need for any young person to be able to define their own path. And we believe that as well. But what we found is that beyond just coding, we teach young people how to think before learning how to code. So we create original hip hop music, videos, and learning activities that teach computational thinking concepts and computer science concepts to more diverse young people. Imagine Schoolhouse Rock for computer science. So we teach in a way that students learn. We leverage youth culture, pop culture references, and teach in a language that resonates with young people. And we believe the path to change in our world is to inspire our young people to shift from being passive users of technology to empowered problem solvers and developers.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Actually, very succinct overview. Let's dive into your deck. So I'm going to bring up your presentation now. And I think the format that we decided to use today is we're not going to do like a full pitch, like where Armando presents, for 15 minutes straight without sort of interruptions. P.S. I think everyone should know by now that that's not how normal VC pitches go. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of go slide by slide, and we're going to basically interrupt the crap out of you every 5 seconds.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right. So let's get into it.
All right. Here we are. So Code Society, this is our investment deck. So on the first slide here, right, again, as I mentioned before, there's systemic inequality in the tech talent pipeline. Our whole vision is to enable the next generation of diverse innovators and creative to create digital solutions for our increasingly diverse market. So this whole inequity starts first in the education space. Black and brown young people are 12 times less likely to have access to computer science education, which leads then to a leaky tech talent pipeline, right? There's 1.4 million tech jobs and only 400,000 qualified candidates. So we're saying there's 1 million unfilled jobs in the evolving in emerging tech industry. That then leads to only 8% of the tech workforce as it stands now are Black or Latinx. And now when we talk about the future of technology, the innovators, the people who are shaping our society and shaping our world through innovative products, only 4% of tech entrepreneurs are Black and Latinx founders. So those inequities and those disparities have existed throughout the whole kind of evolution of the tech landscape. Now, in our COVID-19 context, education, actually our world, has permanently changed in ways that I think we are still beginning to understand and comprehend. What we've seen is 83% of students depend on a distance learning program from their school, right? So parents are juggling, working from home responsibilities, taking care of family members, taking care of young people. 124,000 US and public and private schools have closed, which means teachers were unprepared for the overnight pivot to distance learning. And 55 million students are now trying to find some way of being engaged in educational experiences and educational content directly through virtual conferencing software and experiences like this. So what we've seen now is the disparities in the access to Wi-Fi, to devices at home, and much less the content and education around computer science education has now been exacerbated, and the gap has now been widened more.
So Armando, I have, is it okay to hop in?
Please.
Yeah, so I like the slide. One tip is your talk track is really good. I would make the imagery much bigger here and don't just basically be reading what you're saying for your little bullet points here. Just for investor pitches, if I have to read and I'm looking at what you're saying. I'm not processing the other stuff that's on the screen. So these are really good talk tracks for these particular bullet points that you're talking about. But just make the imagery bigger, and the 83 and the 124 can dominate the screen, and maybe you have pictures of schools or whatever, because your talk track is really good. You don't have to have it in words here because that's a distraction.
Yeah, I was just going to add a point as well, because the thing that I'm not walking away with is which problem you're solving. So I think on the first slide, you sort of identify an employment problem, which I think you trace back to not like there being a lack of education, right? Like, because not enough, minority individuals make it into the pathway that leads them to like this kind of outcome. And then we have this COVID thing, which feels like, I don't know what it is, right? Like, I'm not sure if you're like, this feels almost like you're saying the why now kind of version of like if I was in a normal investor deck, I might be like, why should we be doing this right now, right? Like, and this feels a little bit like that. But I feel like it's sort of taken me a little bit off where I'm still kind of confused. Are you solving education or are you solving the outcomes, right? Like from education itself, right? Because like, even if you go back one slide a little bit, there's a lot here. And I think, to Dan's point as well, like I would love to just see the 2 or 3 metrics that you think are the most important, right? Like really amplified. Your talk track is good. And I would speak to them, right? Like this feels like a good version, like from my opinion, there's always the secondary sale. So like, what do you mail an investor versus like, what do you present, right? And so there is a version that you want to present, which I think leaves you to be the star and really have a conversation. And then there's sort of like the follow-up where you're like, well, here's the stuff that in case your partners or someone else needs to see it, this is why we think this is important. But with these 4 stats, what I don't see is a build. I don't see like, because you may be saying it's a cycle, but I don't really get that there's a crescendo to it.
Ooh, I like, Rick, that you use a music term in there.
I don't know anything about music, by the way.
And the other thing too, Armando, is to make the impact, because these talking points are all so important, give them a pause when you're hitting them on the key points, right? Like stop and let it settle for a second so that the pause gives people the effect of, oh crap, we have to solve this. So practice that rhythm, because that's when it settles in.
Great. Excellent. Amazing feedback. Thank you all.
And then let me just throw a couple things in your way as well. I'm going to rewind all the way to the very beginning of this presentation. And so this is the investment deck. So this is what you would be presenting if you were in a meeting with, with a VC or with an angel investor. And the first thing that comes to mind is why I'm here. So your first slide jumps into a problem and the definition of the problem. But the best thing you can do is to kind of set the context for why the things you're about to say matter so much. And the easiest way to do that is to say your first slide is basically says something about the mission that you have, that you're embarking on, right? So Code Society is like, what is it? Now I know why I'm here. Oh, this is an ed tech company. Oh, this is a consumer company, like whatever it is. And now I have some context to process the information you're about to give me. If you don't do that, then it leads me to go through your first slide and hear all these different metrics and say, okay, so I guess we're solving that problem in some kind of way. I don't know if this is an education solution or if this is an enterprise software. I don't know where we're going, but I'll go with you. And then we get to the next page and then we have COVID. I'm like, okay, well, now what are we doing? And so you're forcing me to try to do the math when you already know what the answer is. So give me the answer up front and then start to walk me through how we got there. So.
Great point. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep.
The opening is so important, Armando. That's why we're drilling in so hard on this. Because
it is.
This is recorded, Armando, so don't worry about taking notes. You'll be able to replay this.
Okay.
Okay. Because I see you trust me, you'll be able to see yourself.
You'll get all the video. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. All right, perfect. The gems that are being shared here, I'm trying to capture all of it. So that's great. That's awesome. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so provide the context up front and take out the guesswork. Orient the viewer into really seeing and understanding what it is we do and why we're doing it, and then get into the problem state.
Yes.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you. Great. Okay. And the purpose of the two slides here is and and thank you for that. We're trying to establish the problem, and then to say that the problem now has been exacerbated, right? Has now been magnified. And that's the goal of these two.
So on that note, I would do exactly that. So this slide shouldn't say COVID-19 impact on education. This slide should say something to the effect that COVID-19 has exacerbated the problems that I just told you about, right? Like make it really clear where this is headed and why. One of the dangers I see right now is that every startup that's pitching is in response to COVID-19. Like literally everything that people are pitching is somehow related to COVID-19, which is fair. Everything is impacted by it, but everything is not a solution for what COVID-19 has caused. COVID-19 has in many ways just accelerated the decline in retail. It has exacerbated the situations, the limitations and the challenges that we experience in our education system. So I would put this in a proper context and just say that the issues associated with COVID-19 and the way that we are trying to deal with that has just made it that much more important that this problem that we just told you about needs to get solved. And we think we have a way of doing
that. And if I can add one thing, I think I always give this advice to founders is be careful with the claims you make, right? Because it's a little early to actually know, right? So we don't have a definitive line of sight that there's suddenly, it's not like we could be like, there's gonna be a lot more pregnancies because like COVID and everyone was stuck at home. Like we can't actually draw that line yet. And so sometimes if someone wants to not like you, all they need is one bold claim you make to be like, these guys don't know what they're talking about. They're not research based. They're not like driven by data. I could always whack people with things like this pretty easily. So I agree. Like people being home, I think what it's creating is an opportunity to reinvent how education is delivered more so than it is holding more people back. Right? I feel like right now I can't make that claim nearly as well as I can say that everyone is scrambling to find new ways to educate, as opposed to it's making the problem worse that people like don't end up in technology degrees or something, right? Like that, like is a little bigger of a leap for me to get to that personally. But I certainly see everyone scrambling to figure out what do I do with my kids and how do I get to keep them educated?
Absolutely. I have another slide here that was in an appendix that was part of that opportunity. Which begins to speak to that a little bit. And I would love your feedback on the comparison between and maybe the order, or if this slide has a purpose, has a space. So essentially the narrative behind this is that education as we know it no longer exists, right? That education is fundamentally changing. And schools will continue to operate, right, on a hybrid version of in-person and virtual. So the need for an out-of-the-box solution, right? So the future of education, so I guess this is the opportunity statement, right? The future of education is to be culturally responsive, right? To be able to speak to young people through the cultures that they live, acquire, and embrace, and see the world through. An out-of-the-box solution, self-directed, self-guided, and a project-based experience.
What I think, so one, I think the statements here are bold. And again, we don't know. So when we say that education as we know it no longer exists, that's a really strong statement, right? 100% distance learning format, we don't know if that's exactly what's about to happen or not. We know temporarily that's where we are, but we don't know if that's the long term. What I would suggest is you're probably better off positioning this as a solution that works independent of what we decide to do. So it's effectively COVID proof, right? So Whether you are in the classroom or you're at home, it doesn't matter. This is the thing. Like the most impactful statement you made when you first started speaking was this notion of schoolhouse rock for computer science. Almost everybody, probably north of 30, knows what you're talking about when you make the schoolhouse rock reference. And that probably crystallizes it in everyone's mind, because that was something that happened on Saturday mornings if you're watching cartoons, right? Like, it had nothing to do with the classroom, but it was something that to this day you can go back and relate to and say, based on that, I kind of know how a bill gets made, right? Like that's how a bill becomes law. So you have these reference points that you can go back to, and whether you were at school or you were at home, you got those lessons. And I think that's probably the better play, because now it doesn't really matter as much what the government's response to COVID-19 is going to be. This thing works regardless.
Yeah, so, I would say, like, I was just going to add, I think, especially William, I really love that point, because I think you're not doing this opportunistically. You were doing this regardless of this happening, right? Like, you're not like, whoa, solve this problem because COVID. You're like, you're the, the fun relative Kuman, right? Like for a certain kind of thing, like where it's not like learning math skills, but it's learning like the next step in math skills, right? And even if you rewind back even to the problem, I still feel like, a very common pattern in how you present the problem is like or like supporting things to the larger problem, right? Like, like, is it minority, minority students do not enter the technology workforce, right? And then why is that, right? Like, one, because their schools don't offer programming around it, right? Two, the content is like not relatable, right? And three, like whatever, right? But these are backing into broader problem statement that you're ultimately saying. And I think, like, when you say about the market, well, great, like, because only 4% of the market is, like minorities, like, great, there's a lot of room to grow, right? Like, there's a ton of jobs to be filled, right? Like, et cetera. But yeah, I still think that, I think Dan said it best. If you screw up this part, everything else doesn't work, right? Like, and so that you have to get the first thing you say right. Otherwise, if I just don't think the problem's that real, right? Like, I won't even care what your solution is. Yeah, but we've probably been here a while, so maybe we can go.
Yeah, let's go. But this really does drive. Look at how much conversation you've created in these first few slides. Think about that happening in a pitch meeting, and you're like, crap, I've already locked myself into these 3 slides and I haven't gotten to the main part of what we do yet. So that's why this is important. All right, we'll shut up and let you go on.
No, it's great. This is exactly the feedback we've been needing, because it can be, complex and convoluted, and we need support in just, getting tighter and sharper with everything. So again, this is great. This is awesome. I love this. Great. So our solution is we both create original content, and we're building a tech platform that scales that content. So we create original music, videos, and curriculum that teach 26 different computational thinking concepts, all aligned with national learning standards. So from the macro, we are teaching, again, imagine the schoolhouse rock for computer science. All of these national learning standards are written directly into the lyrics, and the lyrics are teaching you the concepts, all originally produced music.
Quick point. I wrote in my notes earlier, don't use acronyms. I don't know what the hell CT is.
Got it.
And so, like, I was just like, okay, I don't know what that means. I also think the side is doing you a great injustice.
And just to respond to our COVID context here, my daughter is here, 3.5 years old. She wants to say hi. Hey, hi, Mama.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh my God.
Bye-bye.
That's it. Meeting's over. Just let her play in the video camera, and I'm good.
Here we are.
Oh.
Cutie.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, apologies for the interruption here.
Don't.
Okay, great. So this is great feedback, because we have another slide here that has, and this is a lot of content and text on this slide. It's very heavy here, but I wonder if this provides more. of the ecosystem that we
need
create.
to do all of this stuff.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I always tell people, like, the solution should be a wireframe. It should just be a flow kind of diagram that shows like how your ecosystem is connected, right? And it should make it easy for me to grok where's the customer, where do we play a role, like if there's an ecosystem or partners in it. Like when I went through these, like I literally said, I can't really see what the product is here, right? Like you have many slides that step into like a product. I still have no idea what the product is. And in your case, it may be worth playing 30 seconds of your stuff to show me what it is, right? Like,
yes.
That's a real thing to show.
I had that. If you go back to the other slide, I saw a play. Is that just an image, or can you actually click on that?
You can click on these images here, and these are examples of our content.
Okay. I mean, I think if you remove everything else and have, as Gregorius is saying, part one of the program is this, part two, part three, and you can click and then make it come to life. Explained it. Like, don't talk to me about something this magical. Show me.
Show. And that's exactly right. The talking about it, we always find that people are like, yeah, I kind of get it. The schoolhouse rock for computer science. All right, you're teaching concepts, but once you see the content, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to, like, now I get it. So that's something we've always struggled with. So that's really great feedback. Just put it up and show. Okay.
So just as an insight into into the mind. So as an investor, I'd be, as soon as I see the word content, I think two things immediately. One, scalability, and two, efficacy. Like in your case, it's about education and does it work, but it also can mean, like, do people like my content, right? And content is a very fickle, if you come down to people's preferences and appeal. And so I'm not saying that's a showstopper, but in my mind, I'm already thinking, okay, content, is this an army of people? And is this something where you're just like making a movie and you're betting that it's a blockbuster? So just know that delivering on looking at the content, like everybody's saying, would help to alleviate or balance off this idea that, okay, if this content is worth it, then it assuages in my mind a little bit these concerns. But as soon as I see the word content, that's exactly where I go, is like, how do you scale that with technology, and what's the proof that anybody cares about your content?
You got it. And that points exactly to something that we've been struggling with, where we've been told in different meetings, they're like, you're not a tech company, you're not necessarily building proprietary technology that is creating some sort of innovation. You're a content creation company that is innovative in education. So your innovation is on how you teach, not so much on, like, the tech platform. I think we shifted. That's been part of our identity crisis, if you can say, and it's coming through in the slides, and you've all caught that. I think what's been interesting is that we focused, our expertise is in creating original content that teaches in a very innovative way. Then through that content, we've surfaced this product idea that is still in early stages, that has some exciting opportunities. So the focus we often struggle is, content, product, and how are we articulating that exactly right in these types of conversations where we're talking about investment and scalability. So that's right on. Yeah. So the way that we try to our approach to then trying to resolve that is focusing on the content at first, saying that that's our sweet spot, our magic, but that our product offerings, that content is then packaged into technology that ultimately scales. It begins first with a learning platform. So we have this game. It's a gamified interaction that's called Lyrical Chef. That's lyrical annotation in a way to break down musical concepts and engage with video. So you unlock different types of content by correctly sequencing and learning the lyrics. There's a larger learning platform, since we build custom curricula as well too. We have an entire suite of original curriculum that then teaches directly to young people and to teachers in classroom and school environments as well too. So part of it is a learning management system that has that. and then our consumer media. So we have a kind of a shell of a mobile app, an MVP of a mobile app that you know, where we're looking at, you know, digital streams, on-demand music, engaging directly with Code Society content.
So just a little feedback. It feels to me like you have 4 companies in here and you're doing a shit.
Yeah, my head's spinning.
Right? Just yeah, I wrote this down. I was like, wow, like how many people are you? Because just to do the content feels like it could be like the whole company could be focused on doing that. And like I think there's an important thing like in conveying the vision versus like the reality of where you are, right? Like and like being realistic with people about this is what we do today. And if there's a thing that you do and you do it well, brag about it, right? Like, yeah, we've seen like 90% completion rate, like whatever it is you can that says this thing works, right? But I feel like all of this is very, very much like, and we'll get to this when you get to the team slide. I was like, even if you had 50 people, this seems like it would be a lot of work for you to deliver on. And right now, I can't tell like how real any of these things are, even with the way you talk about them or frame them as like we're working on or framing or working toward blah blah blah, right? Like, you know, I'm still like I still can't get my head around. So what do you do, right? Like I got the content part, and that seems to be the strongest still to me of everything you said. Is that you make some really great content that teaches kids concepts about programming, I guess, or computational thinking, which you could probably just go with that, right? Like, you know, especially if you can prove it works and it's engaging and people want to pay for it, right? Like that would be a close enough win, you know, in my mind, just for where you are relative to like the age of the company and other things.
And the other pieces are just delivery mechanisms.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not the product, really. Those are your delivery mechanisms to get it in the hands and you know, make it useful. But to Gregarious' point, that's not the product that we're in love with is what you came up with, right? The music and pulling it all together. These other things are just the how you get it out. So I do think it's important to stress that you've unlocked this magical way of teaching code, that it's relevant to the problem statement, and this is how we're going to deliver it.
Got it. This is how we're going to, the technology that ultimately scales the impact, right? That scales it to, gets it in the hands of the folks we're serving. Got it. Okay, great. Okay. So the second part to this slide is a little bit of it's a focus into this Lyrical Chef iPad game. This is where we load content, our actual musical content, and because the lyrics of the music are teaching you the concepts, you sequence together the lyrics and it unlocks new video that teaches you the lyrics and then the sub concepts, that the computational thinking concepts that each one of those lyrics are teaching you. So the purple is the lyric, and then the yellow to red is the actual computational thinking concept that it's teaching you. So like decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction, these kind of abstract concepts that exist in technology education. So this is what we've piloted. We have a functioning MVP right now. That's an iPad game, and we're building ultimately a web app that has this gamified interaction with our content.
So when you say pilot, it's good to clarify, are you working with a school, a group of kids, a school district system? Like what does that mean exactly to say you're piloting something? Doesn't just saying you're piloting doesn't really help me understand your progress.
Absolutely. No, great. I have some traction, but to respond to that specifically, we have partners and activation. So this is part of our traction. So we've partnered with Google Code Next, Atlanta Public Schools, organization called All Star Code. We actually just cemented a partnership with the Computer Science for All initiative in the Department of Education in New York City. as well as the national CS for All organization. We've piloted and done workshops at Apple, at Monroe College. Yes, We Code. We had a partnership with NYU Steinhardt. So we've been for the last year and a half or so, running pilots directly with young people, but also spreading our content, and having educators deliver. Because for us, we don't want to define our entire model around a direct services model. We're providing the content and the curriculum for educators to ultimately serve their young people.
So let me hop in here, Armando. So the brand parade is good, but what I want to hear is we've worked with 5,000 students in 25 schools or in the last 6 months who have all used the game at least twice a week for the last 12 weeks or something like that. Then you can tell me where you got those folks from or who you're partnering with. But again, what does a partnership mean, right? You met with them twice and you gave them a non-binding letter of intent, and that is a partnership. And I'm not saying for you particularly that's the case, but when entrepreneurs are pitching, they tend to hedge or not hedge, but extrapolate what a partnership means. And I know I have to have my radar on as an investor. It's like, does this person just think because somebody met with them once and said this is a great idea that they have a partnership? So get concrete, and you can talk track this, just like Marcela said. You can talk track and just say, we have 5,000 students who have already used this, right? You can really emphasize the traction part around. I mean, in my mind, I'm just tipping my cards. I love the product. I think it's brilliant, and there's actually lots of science and research that's been done around how music increases retention. I think they've used it for decades now. So I think you're onto the right track. But if I don't know that there's any efficacy yet, I'm in this content space of like, who cares, right?
Who cares? Yeah.
You're creative guys. You put out a track. Sometimes people like it, sometimes they don't. Show me that the people, both students are saying, yeah, I love this. This is Schoolhouse Rock to me. And teachers, administrators, basically people who are going to be offering more formal computer education say, these kids are rocking. They come in ready to go in ways that I've never seen before. That's what I want to see as an investor, because then I know you're cracking the problem.
Great. Excellent. Great feedback. Thank you.
So,
sorry, no, go ahead, William.
I was just going to boil all this stuff down. I think that at the end of the day, the thing that's missing here is your demo. I think you being able to show what the content is that's being created, and then from there being able to show the impact that it's having, whether it be the direct reaction of students, the performance that you can show in the numbers, even if it's on a small scale. That's the thing that's missing. So when you go back and you refer to Schoolhouse Rock, the best way to explain Schoolhouse Rock is to show it. Is to go find a video of it from YouTube and show it and say, hey, this is what I'm talking about. And I think in this case, because you're talking about content creation, then it really comes down to the quality of the content. And so if it doesn't look good, it's not going to matter. So I got to see it. And I think in this case, everything that you do, everything in this deck has to be related to the demonstration of the content that's being created and the impact that it has. And that's in the images. You don't need to have a lot of words because the content itself speaks for itself. The images, the sounds, everything else is all related to this production that we have. And I think that everything that you do has to be consistent and in line with that. I feel like if you can show the content and people walk away with, to Dan's point, like he wants to feel excited by what this is. He thinks it's exciting, but he can't tell because he's going through all this stuff that's on all these different slides, and it's actually dampening the impact of what you're trying to convey. And I think the best thing you can do is literally in your pitch, you can say, look, this is who we are, this is what we do. And I could go on and on and on about it because I'm so excited about it. But let me show it to you. Yeah. And let me give you a little bit of an opportunity to see what kind of impact it has on the kids. And then after I've done that, we can come back and we can talk about the details about how we make this available to all these different people.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's great. Oftentimes when we do a formal kind of the 5-minute pitch, we've done a number of just like big 5-minute pitches in public areas. My co-founder and I actually, specifically my co-founder Chenitz Pettigrew, he performs the song to open the whole thing. He does about 10 seconds of one of our songs. I just switched the screen here. I feel anxious and excited to show a little bit. I don't know if we have the opportunity. There we are. Great. So here is a song that teaches you the concept and subconcepts of algorithm. Make sure that the audio comes through. Can you hear the audio?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Can you send me the URL as well?
You got it.
Recipe, the formula, ingredients in order to get to the solution and the places that you going to. Round and 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 go. Round and round and round and round and round and you identify the problem, broke it into pieces. Saw a couple patterns where they keep repeating. If it was complicated, you made it really basic. Now you need a strategy to keep it circulating. Recipe for success, a blueprint for building, some rules to live by, steps for solutions. Everything is clicking, got you in a rhythm, got you in the zone of your own algorithm. Recipe, the formula, ingredients in order to get to the solution and the places that you going to. Round and 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 go. Round and 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 go. Let's be clear, well informed with no confusion. Control your flow and know the steps and how you're moving. It's like a strategy you use to solve a problem with, or directions to a place that all you're trying to get. Make sure it's thought out. Logic and reasoning.
So that's a sample of the work there.
You gotta always know your when, where, and your why. Just take your time so you can decide on how to apply. Recipe, prepare the feast. We all eat, algorithm.
Yeah, I would give yourself no more than 30, maybe 45 seconds.
You got it. Perfect.
To do that.
Yeah,
probably 30.
Show it and then tell how well it works, right? I think
yep,
that's what you really got to do.
Armando, the demo link that you had further up in your presentation, are those shorter? Are they summaries? Do they, go from sample to a kid saying how that helped to a teacher? Like, do you have that demo 1, 2, 3? Right? Because it's music, kid, teacher.
Okay.
So if
that's great. We have
we have examples of that, but that's a great to put them all together in very specific format like that that's great.
Yeah, because again, like I get why kids like that music, and I understand as an adult why they're repetitive, but it's not gluing it together for me. Right. And maybe the app does that. Maybe you're better off showing how the app does it. So let's spend, off the show. I think we should spend some time looking at how to present that best, because, and this happens all the time with all of us creating product. We're so deep in the product that it all makes sense to us. But when we bring it outside of people that haven't seen it, we're like, wait, okay, yeah, good song if you like that music, but how does that work? You're an educator. You may know how that works, but you're likely pitching to a group of investors and maybe 1 out of 3 of them get it right away. And the other 2, you got to really shove it in their face to get them to understand how all of this connects. And I think everybody's right. if you just open and hit them in the head with that from the get-go, and they see all this excitement and movement happening, and then it's just the how and then the impact.
Got it. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I envision that 30 to 45 seconds. I mean, you could do 15 seconds of what you just showed. You keep the soundtrack going, and then layer in B-roll or maybe an interview or a testimonial with a teacher and or a student talking about it, and that delivers a lot in terms of you know, whatever they say, like pictures worth 1,000 words, videos worth 1,000,000. So
1,000,000. You're right.
yeah.
You got okay. So in the context of any type of kind of investor conversation or kind of pitch, because we have all that content. We have teachers, we have young people, we have people telling us how much they've enjoyed our experiences and how much it actually works. But that's great. If we could produce just a small kind of like pitch demo that shows.
I would bring that. By the way, if you do have those kinds of here's the thing I would worry about, right? Like Marcella said, you sort of hinted at this. If they don't like this kind of music, they may also not be turned on. So I think like what you want to really overwhelm them with is how well it works, more so than the actual artifact, right? Because you know, if I'm like, I can't even understand what they're saying, like whatever, right? Like whatever BS they may give you or whatever personal preferences they have, that should not play into it because it should be so obvious that this shit works, right? Like, so like, you know, I love like if you have a 1-minute video like Dan is saying, like that can be shared easily, that has a little bit of the music, a little bit of the actual video with then overlays, maybe the product and how that got created, and then switching transition, like pull quotes from actual customers or users and some stats or graphs, like putting together a 1-minute video that does all of those things is your best marketing tool for investors and for users as well, right? Teachers, investors, etc.
Awesome, that's great.
We are like we have 10 minutes left, so I'm thinking maybe we should let's try to at least get a little bit further into your deck, just so we can make sure we get some eyes on everything.
Great, excellent. Okay, all amazing feedback. Again, thank you so much. It's the traction, the community pilots and partners. This was the solution that we briefly covered, or this was meant to be the why it works and how it works well. This is the revenue streams. So in the education market itself, we see a B2C solution specifically through direct to student in the mobile app. The game itself allows for then young people to be engaging in an individual learning experience with our content. But then we also have a B2B/G where we're selling access to, it's a membership ultimately to our platform that has the content, but also all of the curricula. So we have fully developed curricula that's all written specifically to teachers to implement in spaces. So that's then becomes a membership opportunity for schools and teachers to then implement in their schools, in their classrooms. And then we're piloting in emerging in kind of these commercial channels too. So there's a lot of opportunity around individual kind of just music content in general. So because we have our content that we're filtering through our product, there's also other content that can filter through the product as well and be delivered through the product as well. So we're piloting and exploring in these spaces.
So when I looked at this ahead of time, this is the slide that sort of kind of was a red flag to me, just because it feels like you don't know what you want to do, and then so you're throwing out all these, we're going to have a whole set of things, and whichever one sticks. I know that I've worked with ed tech companies before, and investors run away from ed tech a lot because the challenge is sales is really tough to scale in ed tech, right? Let's say you lock down a borough in New York. I don't know how New York's organized, but let's say you lock down one district. How you sold that one district has nothing to do with how LA or Kansas City or Seattle is going to buy it. Sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's the school, sometimes it's the principal, sometimes it's the district, sometimes it's the city, right? And so what happens is all this work that you do to develop a sales pipeline and a process that worked with one successful customer, quote unquote, is not replicatable, and so it becomes hard. And I'm not saying that that's a reason not to do the business, but investors don't like that. And so my experience is that that's one of the big stopping points. And so making the friction, I want to see a business model that says friction is low, right? That you can get this into the hands and minds of a bunch of people without a lot of friction. So if you look, I mean, I'm sure you've looked at it, but if you study Khan Academy, right, their approach was liberate the content, let it go free, and get the penetration with it, right? And now their model is, and I haven't followed them completely, but you know, they have corporations and they have other people. Their learning process, to Gregarious' point, you know, they showed it works, and they had a lot of data, and so they could take that and say, we have a secret sauce on how people learn. Let's apply that in places where people want to pay to help people learn, right? So that this it doesn't help you to say we can do anything to anybody and charge 6 different ways.
Yeah, I had taken some similar notes to Dan as well. The thing I don't see here is who's the buyer, right? And so there's a few reasons that this is important, right? It means that when you know who the buyer is, it means that your product development is actually very focused, right? Like it means that you're building a solution that delivers value to someone, right? When you have too many of these, it means that you don't know yet, and so you're still throwing spaghetti at the wall to try and figure out where the value can be created, right? I think the second thing that I think is that the mistake with this slide. And look, early on, this is often the case. We don't actually know for sure, right? Like where it is, but we hopefully have stepped a little in a direction, right? And so I think what you've done here is you've given equal weight to all things, right? And just visually, you could present this as like, this is our buyer, like this is the use case we're servicing, and then we think these may be our future opportunities, and then lower the priority of them, even if it's like, now here's what happens a lot of times. You get into a meeting with somebody and they're like, I like that little bar you have at the bottom a lot more than I like the top one that you have, right? And it becomes a more productive argument about why you should maybe go in one direction. But right now, I got to like basically think you're crazy for thinking you're going to do 4 directions at the same time, right? And what they want, an investor who's keen and wise and smart may say like, I'm very connected in the government side. Like, here's how I can offer, here's how I can bring a lot of value to you. I think you can go here. Or like Dan said, they were like, you should stay away from that. Like it's hot fire, right? Because basically that space is very difficult. And I think you should go win elsewhere because that'll help you build the case to go win this later, right? The other thing that I think is important from my point of view, and I've done it in my own deck, and I've seen this trend more often now, and I think it's a very useful one, is sort of getting into the unit economics, right? Like, so a lot of times, like being able to show what one customer and what their worth is actually really valuable, right? And so if you could show like a customer, like one B2C or one B2B, and by the way, the only one that you have pricing on is B2B, which means to me that you've paid the most attention to it, right? Show how that grows up and how it scales, right? Like, I don't understand. Is it like a teacher buying it once, or does it tend to lead to 20 people buying it, right? Like, can a teacher add it on their own, or does the school district have to buy it, right? Like, all of these questions still remain about the revenue stream. And that's where ultimately where I think like, if you want to make a case for why this can produce revenue, you have to start to do it succinctly. It also means that you've given more thought now downstream to like, how do I go to market? Who are the early customers I'm going to reach out to? How am I going to get to those people, right? Like all those pieces are kind of missing still. And I know this from making the mistake myself in pitching my own business, right? Like you have to think further down, you have to think further up. And so like by presenting this data, some of it this way, it shows an evolution of your thought or your understanding of the market in both directions.
Got it.
Can you? I wanted to go see.
So these are our initial targets here, as we have started to define, you know, what exactly what we were saying on that last slide around what it is we're selling and who we're selling it to, and having conservative numbers. entering into the space and finding that space there. So our immediate target, we've chosen to narrow down to 7th to 10th graders. Our sweet spots have been middle school and high school. And we found some pilots and some opportunities, given us some data on other learning, on elementary school and also adult learners. But for the purposes of just trying to really define the market opportunity, is grades 7 through 10. So we're looking at schools, teachers, and students in this way.
Yeah, I would again, to Gregarious' point, who's the customer? And that's the one that needs to be the main focus here. And then you can say, 37,000 schools represents 14 million students, right? If schools is to whom you're selling, this shows you did some homework. But again, you're just sort of exacerbating this confusion in my mind. Who's the customer here?
Got it. Also, all three are customers, and this is really great feedback for me. I mean, again, this is amazing because this is how we were trying to segment a B2C specifically to students, and more of the B2B is directly to schools. So this is really good that the information is not translating in the way that
those two
this is great.
Those two slides don't glue together for me, and
Okay.
it's because I just still don't understand the model.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
how much revenue is a school worth, right? Like, or how much, like it's hard to actually understand like the potential, like the business opportunity. We have 1 minute left, unfortunately, but of course we can do some more of this offline. I did want you to go to your team slide because the big question I wrote down here was, why is this the team, right? And it's not clear to me why this set of people are the right people to deliver this solution to the world, right? I don't understand your pedigree. I don't understand have you ever built an app before? I'm sure there's more there. It's just not here. It's not on this slide, right? And I think like I would probably keep it to the founding team, right? Really, and like remove like all the other folks maybe who are supporting that team. You may even need to have it be only the co-founders, but I think like you got to figure out how to tell the story why I'm going to believe like, holy shit, why am I not investing in this team, right? Like, because the idea is fluid. It's going to change. It's going to evolve, right? But like the people are the ones who are going to make it happen, and they're also the people who have to be smart enough to know when to turn and twist to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, team is super important. And I know we're running out of time, but the two other things that I would bring up is you talk about use of proceeds with your investor, like your amount slide. I don't really care that you're spending 20% in operations. What I care about is what's the milestone you're going to deliver with that money. Is it X amount of schools, Y amount of students? And then the one other thing is, as I went through your site, it looked like it said that you were kind of part of a nonprofit, or I didn't really understand that, because that's kind of a disconnect if you want to go get for-profit investors. You have to pursue different avenues between a nonprofit and a for-profit. So
I'll just add one thing. Sorry. For to ask, I said like, what's it going to accomplish, but also how long is it going to last?
Yeah. Great. No, that's excellent feedback too. We have a fiscal sponsorship, so we're a for-profit C Corp. And we have a fiscal sponsorship, which means that there is the opportunity for us to accept grants that are filtered through this fiscal sponsorship. Because in the education space, there's a lot of research grants and kind of direct service grants there that we see an opportunity to engage and help support our efforts. Yeah.
So I apologize that we are at time, guys. This has been wonderful. Armando, thank you for being a good sport. I think about sort of taking the feedback. It's always hard to sit there and sort of get fired at from all directions. But we all do it with love. And I know we're all here to support you beyond this one session. If I can, thank you, William and Dan as well for joining us. We hope you will come back and let's do this often and it's been wonderful. We look forward to seeing everyone next week. Once again, as we mentioned, if you would like to catch future episodes, just head over to foundercraft.com. That's where we list all of our upcoming episodes. And if you'd like to apply to be on this show, you'd like to be in the hot seat, getting grilled, Well, there's an easy way to do that
I think
too.
we're done after this. I think I've lost a friend and a show.
Yeah, no, on the
Yeah,
contrary, again, I
Armando.
couldn't be more grateful again for the opportunity to not only share our work, but to constantly sharpen how we're speaking about our work so that it's communicated well. So we have more work to do, and I can't express how much we appreciate your feedback, and we'll take it all to note.
Great. It was good to see you, Dan and William. Thank you very much.
You too. Thanks for the
Bye,
invitation.
everyone. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
great
much.
day.